Have you ever stopped to think about how your life could completely change in just 1 year? Have you ever imagined leaving behind an exhausting routine where it feels like everything is just survival to live a reality of abundance, freedom, and achievements? And what if I told you that there is an ordinary person just like you who experienced this real transformation through the law of attraction? This is the story of Michael Carter, a simple, hard-working man whose life seemed completely defined. Driving long hours every day, earning little at the end of the month, and arriving home too exhausted to dream of something bigger. Yet inside him, something was burning, an almost extinguished flame of hope that there could be more. Michael lived in Chicago, working as a rideshare driver. His routine began before sunrise and often ended long after midnight. He spent 12 to 14 hours a day behind the wheel, facing traffic, grumpy passengers, and a constant sense of physical and mental exhaustion. Despite all his effort, money never seemed enough. Rent fell behind, bills piled up, and no matter how hard he worked, there was always the feeling of running on a treadmill, lots of effort but getting nowhere. In moments of silence, sitting in his car waiting for the next ride, Michael would ask himself, "Is this all life is? Was I born just to pay bills and work until I can't anymore? Or is there a way to break this cycle?" It was on one of those late nights, exhausted after more than 13 hours of driving, that he first came into contact with the law of attraction. While waiting for a passenger and scrolling through videos on his phone to distract himself, he stumbled upon a testimony from a man who claimed to have completely changed his life by changing his thoughts and energy. At first, Michael was skeptical. It seemed too good to be true. "Think positive and attract wealth? That's a fairy tale," he murmured. But something inside him couldn't simply dismiss the idea. Deep down, he remembered a phrase his mother often repeated when he was a child. "What you believe with all your heart, the universe will find a way to bring it to you." That night, lying in his tiny bed, Michael couldn't sleep. The words about visualization, gratitude, and the power of the mind echoed in his head. He thought about how, until that moment, his life had been guided by fear, lack, and scarcity. Perhaps it was time to try something different. And so, with a mix of desperation and hope, he decided to make a silent pact with himself. He would give this teaching a real chance. He would not just listen passively, but truly apply it in his life, day after day, without excuses. He didn't know it yet, but this decision would be the first step of a transformation so profound that in just 1 year, he would go from being a simple driver to becoming the owner of his own company, employing others, and living the abundance that once seemed impossible. Have you ever wondered what your life would be like if, instead of focusing on problems, you focused only on what you want to achieve? Have you ever imagined waking up every day with the certainty that the universe is conspiring in your favor? This was exactly the kind of thought that began to occupy Michael Carter's mind after that night when he first heard about the law of attraction. In the following days, even exhausted from driving more than 12 hours, he began seeking more information. Between rides, Michael started listening to motivational audios in the car, podcasts about prosperity, and videos of people sharing their own experiences. What once seemed like a fairy tale began to gain consistency within him. One phrase in particular stayed in his mind. "You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are." Michael began to reflect. If he wanted abundance, freedom, and success, he needed to become the version of himself that already had all that, not in the distant future, but in the present, here and now. It was then that he decided to put into practice 3 basic steps he had learned. Daily visualization. He started closing his eyes every day for at least 10 minutes, imagining himself living the life of his dreams. He saw himself waking up in a bigger home, driving a new car, but most importantly, he saw himself as a free man with time to enjoy life. Constant gratitude. Despite all difficulties, Michael began to give thanks for what he already had. He expressed gratitude for the car that works every day, for the rides that ensured his survival, and even for the moments of silence which used to bother him but now he saw as opportunities to dream. Positive affirmations. He wrote phrases in a notebook like, "I am prosperous, I attract opportunities, I deserve abundance." He repeated these phrases daily, even if, deep down, he still felt a pang of doubt. At first, it felt strange. He felt almost ridiculous repeating those words softly inside his car. But little by little, something began to change. It wasn't the external reality yet, but the way he felt inside. Before, every canceled ride or rude passenger would irritate Michael, and he would carry that negative energy for the rest of the day. Now he took a deep breath and repeated to himself, "The universe is guiding me. Everything is happening for my good." And curiously, as soon as his mental attitude began to shift, small things started happening differently. On a day when he thought about quitting early, he received a long ride that paid almost twice the usual amount. On another day, he met a passenger who, for no apparent reason, started talking about business and opportunities. Were these coincidences? Michael couldn't say, but in his heart, he began to feel that he was on the right path. More than that, the feeling of hope returned to his life. He no longer saw himself just as a tired driver, but as someone in progress, as if preparing for something much bigger yet to come. During this phase, Michael realized that the law of attraction wasn't just about asking the universe for things, but about changing who he was internally. It was an exercise in emotional discipline and mental consistency. And even though nothing monumental had happened yet, he already felt a deep change. For the first time in years, he was excited about the future. Little did he know that those simple practices would be the seeds of an extraordinary transformation. Do you believe in coincidences or signs? Has it ever happened that you think intensely about something and suddenly it appears before you as if by magic? For Michael Carter, experiences like this began to happen more and more frequently after he fully immersed himself in the practice of the law of attraction. It was a cold morning in Chicago when he woke up earlier than usual. Even before leaving for work, he followed his routine, closing his eyes, taking a deep breath, and visualizing the life he wanted to live. He imagined himself running his own business, leading people, feeling proud of himself. The feeling was so real that he smiled to himself. That very day, something different happened. While driving a passenger to the airport, a casual conversation about careers and dreams began. The passenger, a logistics businessman, asked Michael, "Have you ever thought about starting your own business? You seem to have the vision for it." Michael was surprised. No one had ever said anything like that to him. The words echoed in his mind. It wasn't exactly an invitation or an offer, but it felt like a push from the universe, as if someone were opening an invisible door in front of him. In the following days, more coincidences began to appear. An old friend he hadn't seen in years suddenly called, offering a partnership opportunity in small transportation services. At another moment, a passenger left a book about mindset and wealth in the car, and instead of just returning it, Michael decided to read it. It was as if life was responding to his new vibrations. Before, he only attracted more of the same: fatigue, scarcity, worries. Now he was starting to attract ideas, people, and opportunities. Michael knew he couldn't ignore these signs. He began carrying a notebook in his car where he wrote everything: thoughts, impactful phrases, business ideas. With each new coincidence, his confidence in the process grew. But along with excitement came fear. He still had overdue bills, and he still worked exhausted every day. The question that wouldn't leave his mind was, can I really change my life, or is this just a fleeting illusion? It was during this internal conflict that one of the most remarkable moments of his journey happened. One night, after an especially tough day, Michael parked his car and began writing in his notebook. He didn't know exactly why, but he wrote with all the letters. "I will own a transportation company. I will employ people. I will prosper. At that moment, he felt something different. It was as if by putting those words on paper, he had made a contract with the universe. For the first time, it wasn't just a wish or imagination, it was a decision. In the following days, Michael intensified his practices. He doubled his visualization time, expanded his gratitude list, and repeated his affirmations aloud while driving. He was no longer just experimenting with the law of attraction. He was living it. And it was precisely at this moment of full commitment that a concrete opportunity appeared before him, the first real piece that would change the whole game. A regular client, impressed with his attitude and dedication, asked if Michael could take on a fixed transportation contract for the employees of a small local company. It was work larger than app rides, and more importantly, it was a step towards something he was beginning to believe was possible. Michael accepted without hesitation, and even without knowing exactly how he would manage, he felt an inner certainty. The universe is guiding me. I am ready. He didn't have the company yet, didn't have employees yet, but at that moment he realized something fundamental. The future he had been visualizing was already beginning to manifest in the present. Have you ever faced an opportunity that seemed bigger than yourself? Have you felt that flutter in your stomach when you realize that the dream you visualized so intensely is finally knocking at your door? That's exactly how Michael Carter felt when he received the proposal to manage fixed employee transportation for a small local company. At first, insecurity almost paralyzed him. Michael asked himself, "Am I ready for this? What if I fail? What if I can't handle it?" It was the old pattern of negative thoughts trying to return. But this time he decided not to give in. Instead, he remembered the affirmations he had been repeating every day. I am capable. I attract opportunities. I am prosperous. He took a deep breath and accepted the challenge. The contract wasn't huge, but it represented something much greater. It was the first time Michael stopped being just a driver and started thinking like someone who could manage a business. He needed to organize schedules, plan routes, and most importantly, show professionalism. In the first days, he did everything alone, but soon realized he couldn't manage it all. It was too much work for just one person. And that was when he remembered something he visualized every day: not being just a worker, but an employer. With a racing heart, he made a bold decision. He hired another driver to help him. It wasn't easy. Michael still didn't have extra capital, but he trusted that by investing in this partnership, he was expanding his business and creating room for growth. He used part of the little savings he had, made a fair agreement with the new partner, and for the first time tasted the feeling of leadership. It wasn't just about driving more rides, it was about building something bigger, something aligned with the vision he carried within him. Every morning before leaving the house, Michael reinforced his spiritual routine: visualization, gratitude, and affirmations. He understood that for the business to grow, he needed to maintain high energy. He knew that if he fell back into the old pattern of scarcity and fear, everything could collapse. And the magic began to happen. The client was satisfied with the service. Recommendations spread. Soon after, another company contacted him requesting quotes. Michael could hardly believe it. Within weeks, what seemed like a simple contract was turning into a network of possibilities. The most incredible part was that it all seemed to flow naturally. It was as if the universe had been waiting for him to take the first step before opening the doors. But along with the new responsibilities came tests. There were days when the car broke down, passengers complained, and deadlines seemed impossible to meet. In moments like these, the old Michael would have panicked, thinking everything would go wrong. But now, with his new mindset, he repeated to himself, "Everything happens for my growth. The universe is on my side." This attitude made all the difference. He didn't just solve problems, he learned from them, strengthening his confidence as a growing entrepreneur. With every obstacle overcome, Michael realized he was becoming someone different. more resilient, more strategic, and most importantly, more aware that his mind was the key to his new reality. And it was during this period, still in the first months of the contract, that he realized something powerful. Life was delivering exactly what he had asked for and visualized. Michael was no longer just a driver. He was becoming an entrepreneur, and this journey was only beginning. Have you ever noticed that when we take a step of faith, life responds by opening even bigger doors? That was exactly what Michael Carter began to experience. The small transportation contract he had secured quickly turned into a domino effect. The initial company was so satisfied with his work that they recommended his service to another. Within weeks, Michael was managing not just one, but 3 different routes. What once seemed like a single opportunity was now becoming a growing business. But with growth came challenges. Michael, who had until recently been just a driver, now had to deal with managing people, organizing routes, maintaining vehicles, and negotiating contracts, all while battling the thoughts of scarcity that kept trying to creep back. At times, he found himself thinking, what if this ends suddenly? What if I lose everything I've gained so quickly? Do I really deserve this life? These doubts came like shadows, trying to extinguish the light he had ignited within himself. But Michael already knew how to combat them. He reminded himself daily that the law of attraction wasn't just about asking the universe for things, but about maintaining the right vibration even in the face of problems. It was at this moment that he developed a new discipline. In addition to visualization, gratitude, and affirmations, Michael began practicing something he called returning to center. Whenever he felt fear or anxiety, he would pause for a few minutes, close his eyes, and take a deep breath. He would recall the vision of his ideal life and silently repeat, "I am guided, I am safe, I trust the process." This habit made all the difference. One night, after a chaotic day filled with delays and client complaints, Michael almost gave up. Exhausted, sitting alone in his car, feeling like he couldn't handle it, he opened his old notebook, where months before he had written, "I will own a transportation company. I will employ people. I will prosper." Reading those words, tears ran down his face. He realized that he was already living what he had declared. Perhaps not in its final form, but the dream was real, and that gave him the strength to continue. Over time, Michael began thinking more strategically. He started setting aside part of his profits to reinvest in the business. He financed his second vehicle and hired 2 more drivers. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just surviving, he was building something bigger than himself. And as if the universe were responding to his commitment, new opportunities began to appear. A school contacted him requesting student transportation. A larger company approached him to negotiate a long-term contract. It was as if with every step he took in faith, more paths opened before him. But there were also moments of solitude. Not everyone around him believed in his vision. Some friends said he was taking too many risks. Others mocked him when he spoke about the law of attraction. But Michael had already understood that others' opinions do not define his reality. He was living proof that it worked. Deep down, he knew. Every challenge, every doubt, every step he took was shaping not just an entrepreneur, but a transformed man. And just as he seemed to be at the peak of this new phase, Michael received a call that would change everything, an opportunity that could take his business to an entirely new level. Have you ever experienced that moment when everything seems to align, as if the universe is conspiring in your favor? That's exactly how Michael Carter felt on an ordinary Friday afternoon when his phone rang. On the other end of the line was Robert Harrison, director of a medium-sized company in the Chicago area. He had heard excellent things about Michael's work through recommendations and wanted to discuss a larger contract, in person. Michael, surprised, accepted the invitation. Deep down, his heart raced. This could be the step that would take his business to the next level. During the meeting, Robert got straight to the point. We need a company to handle all employee transportation logistics. It's an annual contract, but it requires commitment, punctuality, and of course, structure. Do you think you can handle it? The question echoed in Michael's mind. Part of him wanted to shout yes immediately, but another part remembered that his structure was still small. He had only a few drivers and 2 vehicles. It was a huge challenge. That night, back home, Michael barely slept. He thought about all the risks. What if he couldn't deliver? What if he failed? What if he lost the trust of his current clients? But then, amidst the doubts, he remembered how far he had come. Months before, he was just a tired rideshare driver with no hope. It was through the law of attraction, faith, and a shift in mindset that everything began to change. He opened his notebook again and read aloud the phrase he had written at the start of his journey. "I will own a transportation company. I will employ people. I will prosper." At that moment, something shifted inside him. Michael realized that this contract was not just a challenge. It was exactly what he had been visualizing every day. The universe was not testing his limits, it was delivering the answer he had asked for. The next morning, he called Robert with firmness in his voice. "Yes, I accept the challenge. I can handle it." And that's when everything began to move at an astonishing pace. To fulfill the contract, Michael had to expand quickly. He formed partnerships, secured financing to acquire more vehicles, and began structuring his company properly. It was a huge leap, but he deeply believed that the universe would open the necessary paths. And indeed, it did. The bank approved his loan faster than expected. Experienced drivers appeared just when he needed them. Even a local workshop offered special terms to maintain his new fleet. It was as if all the pieces fell into place at the right moment. Of course, it wasn't easy. There were sleepless nights, pressure, and fear of not being able to pay the installments on the new vehicles. But Michael learned to see each obstacle as part of the process. Instead of panicking, he repeated to himself, "I trust. The universe never gives me a burden heavier than I can carry." Week by week, his confidence grew. What had once been just a dream written in a notebook was now becoming reality. Michael was no longer just a driver with a few local contracts. He was now the owner of a company with his own fleet, hired employees, and an increasingly clear vision for the future. And as if the universe were responding to his commitment, new opportunities began to appear. A school contacted him requesting student transportation. A larger company approached him to negotiate a long-term contract. It was as if with every step he took in faith, more paths opened before him. But there were also moments of solitude. Not everyone around him believed in his vision. Some friends said he was taking too many risks. Others mocked him when he spoke about the law of attraction. But Michael had already understood that others' opinions do not define his reality. He was living proof that it worked. Deep down, he knew. Every challenge, every doubt, every step he took was shaping not just an entrepreneur, but a transformed man. And just as he seemed to be at the peak of this new phase, Michael received a call that would change everything. An opportunity that could take his business to an entirely new level. Have you ever experienced that moment when everything seems to align, as if the universe is conspiring in your favor? That's exactly how Michael Carter felt on an ordinary Friday afternoon when his phone rang. On the other end of the line was Robert Harrison, director of a medium-sized company in the Chicago area. He had heard excellent things about Michael's work through recommendations and wanted to discuss a larger contract, in person. Michael, surprised, accepted the invitation. Deep down, his heart raced. This could be the step that would take his business to the next level. During the meeting, Robert got straight to the point. "We need a company to handle all employee transportation logistics. It's an annual contract, but it requires commitment, punctuality, and of course, structure. Do you think you can handle it?" The question echoed in Michael's mind. Part of him wanted to shout yes immediately,
But another part remembered that his structure was still small. He had only a few drivers and 2 vehicles. It was a huge challenge. That night, back home, Michael barely slept. He thought about all the risks. What if he couldn't deliver? What if he failed? What if he lost the trust of his current clients? But then, amidst the doubts, he remembered how far he had come. Months before, he was just a tired rideshare driver with no hope. It was through the law of attraction, faith, and a shift in mindset that everything began to change. He opened his notebook again and read aloud the phrase he had written at the start of his journey. "I will own a transportation company. I will employ people. I will prosper." At that moment, something shifted inside him. Michael realized that this contract was not just a challenge. It was exactly what he had been visualizing every day. The universe was not testing his limits, it was delivering the answer he had asked for. The next morning, he called Robert with firmness in his voice. "Yes, I accept the challenge. I can handle it." And that's when everything began to move at an astonishing pace. To fulfill the contract, Michael had to expand quickly. He formed partnerships, secured financing.
Have you ever wanted something so badly, and when you finally achieved it, realized that the accomplishment came with enormous responsibilities? That was exactly what Michael Carter discovered when he took on his biggest contract. At first, everything seemed like a dream. New vehicles, hired drivers, signed contracts, satisfied clients. But as the days went by, Michael realized that leading a company was much more than just expanding. It meant dealing with people, problems, and decisions that required emotional balance and mental clarity. There were days when everything went perfectly. Employees kept schedules, vehicles ran smoothly, and clients praised the service. But there were also chaotic days, drivers calling in sick, vehicles breaking down mid-route, unexpected complaints. In moments like these, the old scarcity mindset tried to resurface. "You're not ready for this. You'll lose everything at any moment. This is too big for you." These thoughts echoed in his mind like ghosts from the past. But Michael had already learned a fundamental lesson. His internal state defines his external reality. He knew that if he gave in to fear, he would start attracting more negative situations. That's when he decided to create a new ritual. Every morning, before opening his eyes, he would lie still for a few minutes and mentally affirm, "I am a confident leader. I am capable of handling any challenge. I attract solutions with ease." This simple habit transformed his energy for the entire day. And the universe responded. When it seemed like there was no way out, a solution always appeared. An angry client would become understanding after a calm conversation. A serious mechanical issue was resolved by a mechanic who unexpectedly offered better terms. An employee on the verge of quitting returned motivated after receiving words of encouragement. Michael began to understand that being an entrepreneur wasn't just about managing contracts, but about inspiring people. He realized that the more he radiated confidence and clarity, the more his team reflected that energy. Still, there were nights when he lay in bed feeling crushed by pressure. The fear of failure tried to steal his sleep. In those moments, he turned to his old notebook, the same one where he had written his first affirmations. He read aloud, repeated them mentally, and cried in silence. Not out of sadness, but out of gratitude for living exactly what had once existed only in his imagination. It was through this process that Michael realized the essence of the law of attraction. It wasn't about having a life without problems, but about having the right mindset to turn challenges into steps for growth. With every obstacle overcome, he became stronger. His employees began to see him not just as a boss, but as a leader who believed in the impossible. His clients started to view his company as a reliable partner. And he began to see himself like never before, a man capable of creating his own reality.
But as with every great journey, there were more tests ahead. The expansion was happening at such a rapid pace that Michael knew he would need to make even bigger decisions that could take him to the peak of success or confront him with the greatest risks of his life. And it was exactly at that moment, amid pressure and achievements, that a new opportunity arose, one even greater than all the previous ones. An opportunity that would make Michael face his greatest fear, growing beyond everything he had ever imagined. Have you ever experienced that moment when the universe places something so big in front of you that it's impossible to ignore? Something that challenges your limits while making your heart race with excitement. That's exactly how Michael Carter felt when he received the call that would definitively change the course of his life. On the other end of the line was Victoria Mitchell, director of a large network of school and corporate transportation companies. She had heard about Michael's work and requested an urgent meeting. The contract Victoria was offering was much larger than anything Michael had ever handled. It was an opportunity to transform his company into a regional benchmark, but also a massive financial, logistical, and emotional challenge. That night, Michael barely slept. He knew that accepting meant expanding his fleet, hiring dozens of drivers, and organizing an entire complex operation, something that for many seemed impossible to accomplish in such a short time. He sat in the living room of his small house and reflected. Thoughts stormed through his mind. Can I handle this? What if I fail and lose everything? Do I deserve this opportunity? But then he remembered the transformation he had undergone in recent months. From a tired, hopeless driver, he had become a confident entrepreneur capable of leading people and creating opportunities. All thanks to the law of attraction, mental discipline, gratitude, and daily visualizations that connected him to his most powerful self. Michael closed his eyes and visualized. He saw every new vehicle, every happy driver, every satisfied client. He felt the excitement of leading a united team and making a positive impact on the lives of those around him. He took a deep breath and repeated his affirmations with intensity. I am capable. I deserve to grow. I attract perfect opportunities. The universe supports me in every step. The next day, he entered the meeting with Victoria full of confidence. He explained his plan, showed his vision for expansion, and demonstrated his commitment to delivering excellence. To his surprise, Victoria was impressed. She saw in him not just competence, but determination and alignment with prosperity. The contract was offered to Michael and accepted without hesitation. It was a massive leap, but he knew he was ready. In the following months, the transformation was overwhelming. Michael acquired new vehicles, trained his team, structured processes, and began to be recognized in the region as a benchmark in the sector. Every challenge, absent drivers, logistical problems, complicated negotiations, was faced with faith, confidence, and the mindset that the law of attraction had instilled in him. With each victory, Michael reminded himself that none of this would have happened if he hadn't taken the first step, believing he could change his reality. Every contract, every satisfied client, every happy driver was living proof that thoughts aligned with your desires create tangible results. And it was exactly during this period, leading his expanding company, that Michael realized something profound. The law of attraction doesn't just transform financial lives, it also shapes character, courage, and worldview. He was no longer just a successful entrepreneur. He was a man who had learned to trust himself, the universe, and the power of his thoughts. But the journey was far from complete. Michael knew that maintaining this level of success would require constant discipline and new strategies to continue growing without losing connection with his essence and his dreams. And it was exactly at that moment, amid pressure and achievements, that a new opportunity arose, one even greater than all the previous ones. An opportunity that would make Michael face his greatest fear, growing beyond everything he had ever imagined. Have you ever experienced that moment when the universe places something so big in front of you that it's impossible to ignore? Something that challenges your limits while making your heart race with excitement? That's exactly how Michael Carter felt when he received the call that would definitively change the course of his life. On the other end of the line was Victoria Mitchell, director of a large network of school and corporate transportation companies. She had heard about Michael's work and requested an urgent meeting. The contract Victoria was offering was much larger than anything Michael had ever handled. It was an opportunity to transform his company into a regional benchmark, but also a massive financial, logistical, and emotional challenge. That night, Michael barely slept. He knew that accepting meant expanding his fleet, hiring dozens of drivers, and organizing an entire complex operation. Something that for many seemed impossible to accomplish in such a short time. He sat in the living room of his small house and reflected. Thoughts stormed through his mind. Can I handle this? What if I fail and lose everything? Do I deserve this opportunity? But then he remembered the transformation he had undergone in recent months. From a tired, hopeless driver, he had become a confident entrepreneur capable of leading people and creating opportunities. All thanks to the law of attraction, mental discipline, gratitude, and daily visualizations that connected him to his most powerful self. Michael closed his eyes and visualized. He saw every new vehicle, every happy driver, every satisfied client. He felt the excitement of leading a united team and making a positive impact on the lives of those around him. He took a deep breath and repeated his affirmations with intensity. I am capable. I deserve to grow. I attract perfect opportunities. The universe supports me in every step. The next day,
Have you ever achieved something that once seemed impossible, only to realize that the real test is maintaining and consolidating that success? For Michael Carter, that moment arrived when his company was no longer small. It had become a structured operation with its own vehicles, dedicated employees, and important contracts underway. Despite the accomplishments, new challenges began to emerge. A key driver fell ill, some contracts needed renegotiation, and logistical problems appeared unexpectedly. The fear of failure tried to creep into his mind. What if everything collapses? What if I can't keep up the pace? But Michael had already learned how to handle these feelings. He knew that success doesn't depend solely on external opportunities, but on the internal strength to overcome them. To keep his energy aligned, Michael intensified his daily practices. Detailed morning visualization. He didn't just see his company growing, he felt the excitement of each victory, the joy of his employees, and the gratitude of his clients. Powerful affirmations. He repeated phrases like, I attract solutions, I am abundant, my success is continuous several times a day. Deep gratitude. Even in the face of small problems, he gave thanks for the lessons learned, the resources available, and the opportunities for growth. And, as always, the universe responded. Unexpected solutions began to appear for every problem. An experienced driver volunteered to cover absences. Suppliers offered unexpected discounts. Longtime clients referred new contracts. Michael realized that the more aligned he was with his energy of abundance, the more the universe conspired in his favor. At the same time, Michael began investing in training and motivating his team. He understood that his success depended not only on him, but on every person involved in the business. He created weekly meetings, shared his vision for the future, and encouraged each employee to believe in their own potential. Seeing the collective growth, Michael realized something crucial. The power of the law of attraction goes beyond achieving individual dreams. He understood that inspiring others to believe, create, and prosper also attracts abundance to oneself.
But not everything was linear. There were moments of intense pressure when larger contracts demanded more vehicles, more employees, and strategic decisions that seemed risky. In those moments, Michael took a deep breath and repeated to himself, "I am guided. Everything is happening for my highest good." This mindset made all the difference. He didn't react with fear, but with clarity. Every decision was made with confidence and in alignment with his long-term vision. Over time, Michael realized that the true transformation wasn't just financial. He had become a confident, resilient, and disciplined leader capable of creating a reality that once seemed impossible. His life had been completely transformed, from a tired, indebted driver to a confident and prosperous entrepreneur, employing people, inspiring others, and living the freedom he had always dreamed of. Looking back, he knew that the entire process, from the first visualization to the most challenging contracts, carried an essential lesson. True transformation begins within you. When you change your mind, the world changes with you. And it was at this point that Michael prepared for the final chapter of his journey, reflecting on all his achievements, lessons learned, and how to maintain sustainable growth inspired by the law of attraction. Have you ever imagined reaching a point where everything that once seemed impossible becomes routine? Where each challenge overcome turns into a lesson, and every achievement inspires those around you? This is the story of Michael Carter, who, in just 1 year, completely transformed his life through the law of attraction. Looking back, Michael could hardly believe the journey he had lived. Just 12 months earlier, he was working 12 hours a day as a driver, exhausted, with no clear prospects for growth, and burdened by debt. Today, he owned a rapidly expanding transportation company with its own vehicles, a dedicated team, and solid contracts ensuring stability and prosperity. But the most important change wasn't just financial success. Michael had transformed his mindset, confidence, and life vision. He had learned that the law of attraction is not just about wishing for something, but about taking action, aligning thoughts and emotions, and maintaining consistent faith. His team was deeply impacted as well. Drivers who once worked out of necessity were now motivated, engaged, and confident. Many were inspired by Michael's story and began applying similar principles in their own lives, showing that true leadership transforms lives. Michael remembered every step of his journey. The first visualizations when he still doubted himself. The daily practice of gratitude, which changed his perception of abundance. The repeated affirmations, which gradually replaced fear with confidence. The first small contract, which opened doors to larger opportunities. The big proposal from Victoria, which tested his courage and mental discipline. Every experience was a stepping stone, every challenge a lesson. He understood that the universe doesn't deliver instant miracles, but responds to those who maintain persistence, emotional alignment, and consistent action. Today, Michael woke up excited, knowing that every decision and effort had meaning. He continued applying the practices that had transformed his life, now with a greater vision, inspiring others to believe in themselves. To those following his story, Michael left a clear message. If you believe you can change your life, if you are willing to align your thoughts, emotions, and actions with what you desire, nothing is impossible. The universe is always responding to your vibrations, but you must trust, act, and persist. The law of attraction is not magic. It is discipline, faith, and clarity of purpose. And so, Michael Carter's journey became a living testimony of the power of the human mind. A man who began his exhausting routine as a driver and in just 1 year become an entrepreneur, employer, and example of personal transformation. Today, he knew that every obstacle overcome, every fear faced, and every action taken with faith had contributed to his current reality. More than achieving wealth or professional success, Michael had learned the true lesson of the law of attraction. Transformation begins within you, and when you change, everything around you changes with you. His story was proof that the impossible exists only for those who do not believe. And for anyone wishing to change their life, Michael left a certainty: be patient, consistent, and confident. The universe conspires in favor of those who are ready to receive.